Hello, listening squirrels. I know I look like I have the same thing on from yesterday, but I did change my shirt. This is my yarnologist shirt from Hobby Lobby, the sale. Okay, first chapter of An Old-Fashioned Girl by Louisa May Alcott. Thanks again to Pat Dancer for telling me Louisa May Alcott wrote a lot of books. Sorry, using the camera as a mirror. It looked like I had a makeup foul. I may have. Chapter 1 is called Polly Arrives. It's time to go to the station, Tom. Come on then. Oh, I'm not going. It's too wet. Shouldn't have a crimp left if I went out such a day as this, and I want to look nice when Polly comes. You don't expect me to go and bring home a strange girl alone, do you? And Tom looked as much alarmed as if his sister had proposed to him to escort the wild woman of Australia. Of course I do. It's your place to go and get her, and if you wasn't a bear, you'd like it. Wasn't a bear? Well, I call that mean. I supposed I'd got to go, but you said you'd go too. Catch me bothering about your friends another time. No, sir. And Tom rose from the sofa with an air of indignant resolution, the impressive effect of which was somewhat damaged by a tousled head and the hunched appearance of his garments generally. Kind of sounds like the beginning of Anne of Avonlea a little bit. Brother and sister going to pick her up. Now don't be cross, and I'll get Mama to let you have that horrid Ned Miller that you're so fond of. Come and make you a visit after Polly's gone, said Fanny, hoping to soothe his ruffled feelings. How long's she gonna stay? Demanded Tom, making his toilet by a promiscuous shake. A month or two, maybe. She's ever so nice, and I shall keep her as long as she's happy. She won't stay long, then, if I can help it, muttered Tom, who regarded girls as a very unnecessary portion of creation. Boys of 14 are apt to think so, and perhaps it is a wise arrangement, for being fond of turning somersaults, they have an opportunity of indulging in a good one, metaphorically speaking, when 3 or 4 years later they become the abject slaves of those bothering girls. Look here, how am I going to know the creature? I never saw her, and she never saw me. You'll have to come too, Fan, he added, pausing on his way to the door, arrested by the awful idea that he might have to address several strange girls before he got the right one. You'll find her easy enough. She'll probably be standing round looking for us, I dare say. She'll know you, though I'm not there, because I've described you to her. Guess she won't, then, and Tom gave a hasty smooth to his curly pate and a glance at the mirror, feeling sure that his sister hadn't done him justice. Sisters never do, as we fellows know too well. Do go along, or you'll be too late, and then what will Polly think of me? Cried Fanny, with the impatient poke which is peculiarly aggravating to masculine dignity. She'll think you cared more about your frizzles than your friends, and she'll be about right, too. Feeling that he said rather a neat and cutting thing, Tom sauntered leisurely away, perfectly conscious that it was late, but bent on not being hurried while in sight, though he ran himself off his legs to make up for it afterward. If I was the president, I'd make a law to shut up all boys till they were grown, for they certainly are the most provoking toads in the world, said Fanny, as she watched the slouchy figure of her brother strolling down the street. She might have changed her mind, however, if she had followed him, for as soon as he turned the corner, his whole aspect altered. His hands came out of his pockets. He stopped whistling, buttoned his jacket, gave his cap a pull, and went off at a great pace. The train was just in when he reached the station, panting like a racehorse and as red as a lobster with the wind and the run. Suppose she'll wear a top knot and a thingamabob like everyone else. And however shall I know her? Too bad a friend to make me come alone, thought Tom, as he stood watching the crowd stream through the depot and feeling rather daunted at the array of young ladies who passed. As none of them seemed looking for anyone, he did not accost them, but eyed each new batch with the air of a martyr. "That's her," he said to himself as he presently caught sight of a girl in gorgeous array standing with her hands folded and a very small hat perched on top of a very large chignon, as Tom pronounced it. "I suppose I've got to speak to her, so here goes." And nerving himself to the task, Tom slowly approached the damsel, who looked as if the wind had blown her clothes into rags. Such a flapping of sashes, scallops, ruffles, curls, and feathers was there. "I say, if you please, is your name Polly Milton?" meekly asked Tom, pausing before the breezy stranger. "No, it isn't," answered the young lady with a cool stare that utterly quenched him. "Where in thunder is she?" growled Tom, walking off in high dudgeon. The quick tap of feet behind him made him turn in time to see a fresh-faced little girl running down the long station and looking as if she rather liked it. As she smiled and waved her bag at him, he stopped and wondered and waited for her, saying to himself, "Hello, I wonder if that's Polly." Up came the little girl with her hand out and a half-shy, half-merry look in her blue eyes as she said inquiringly, "This is Tom, isn't it?" "Yes. How'd you know?" And Tom got over the ordeal of handshaking without thinking of it, he was so surprised. "Old Fan told me you'd got curly hair and a funny nose and kept whistling and wore a gray cap pulled over your eyes, so I knew you directly." And Polly nodded at him in the most friendly manner, having politely refrained from calling the hair red, the nose a pug, and the cap old, all of which facts Fanny had carefully impressed upon her memory. "Where are your trunks?" asked Tom, as he was reminded of his duty by her handing him the bag, which he had not offered to take. "Father told me not to wait for anyone else. I'd lose my chance of a hack, so I gave my check to a man, and there he is with my trunk." And Polly walked off after her one modest piece of baggage, followed by Tom, who felt a trifle depressed by his own remissness in polite attentions. "She isn't a bit of a young lady, thank goodness. Van didn't tell me she was pretty. Don't look like city girls, nor act like 'em neither," he thought, trudging in the rear and eyeing with favor the brown curls bobbing along in front. As the carriage drove off, Polly gave a little bounce on the springy seat and laughed like a delighted child. "I do like to ride in these nice hacks and see all the fine things and have a good time, don't you?" she said, composing herself the next minute as if suddenly occurred to her that she was going a-visiting. "Not much," said Tom, not minding what he said, for the fact that he was shut up with the strange girl suddenly oppressed his soul. "How's Fan? Why didn't she come too?" asked Polly, trying to look demure while her eyes danced in spite of her, afraid of spoiling her crinkles. And Tom smiled, for this base betrayal of confidence made him feel his own man again. "You and I don't mind dampness. I'm much obliged to you for coming to take care of me." It was kind of Polly to say that, and Tom felt it, for his red crop was a tender point, and to be associated with Polly's pretty brown curls seemed to lessen its coppery glow. Then he hadn't done anything for her but carry the bag a few steps, yet she thanked him. He felt grateful, and in a burst of confidence offered a handful of peanuts, for his pockets were always supplied with this agreeable delicacy, and he might be traced anywhere by the trail of shells he left behind him. As soon as he had done it, he remembered that Fanny considered them vulgar and felt he had disgraced his family, So he stuck his head out of the window and kept it there so long that Polly asked if anything was the matter. "Pooh, who cares for a countrified little thing like her?" said Tom manfully to himself. And then the spirit of mischief entered in and took possession of him. "He's pretty drunk, but I guess he can hold his horses," replied this evil-minded boy with an air of calm resignation. "Is the man tipsy? Oh dear, let's get out. Are the horses bad? It's very steep here. Do you think it's safe?" cried poor Polly, making a cocked hat of her little beaver by thrusting it out of the half-open window on her side. "There's plenty of folks to pick us up if anything happens, but perhaps it would be safer if I got out and sat with the man." And Tom quite beamed with the brilliancy of this sudden mode of relief. "Oh, do, if you ain't afraid. Mother would be so anxious if anything should happen to me so far away," cried Polly, much distressed. "Don't you be worried. I'll manage the old chap and the horses too." And opening the door, Tom vanished aloft, leaving poor victimized Polly to quake inside while he placidly reveled in freedom and peanuts outside with the staid old driver. Fanny came flying down to meet her, darling Polly, as Tom presented her with the graceful remark, "I've got her," and the air of dauntless hunter producing the trophies of his skill. Polly was instantly whisked upstairs, and having danced a double shuffle on the doormat, Tom retired to the dining room to restore exhausted nature with half a dozen cookies. "Ain't you tired to death? Don't you want to lie down?" said Fanny, sitting on the side of the bed in Polly's room and chattering hard while she examined everything her friend had on. "Not a bit. I had a nice time coming and no trouble except the tipsy coachman, but Tom got out and kept him in order. So I wasn't much frightened," answered innocent Polly, taking off her rough and ready coat and the plain hat without a bit of a feather. "Fiddlestick, he wasn't tipsy, and Tom only did it to get out of the way. He can't bear girls," said Fanny with a superior air. "Can't he? Why, I thought he was very pleasant and kind," and Polly opened her eyes with a surprised expression. "He's an awful boy, my dear, and if you have anything to do with him, he'll torment you to death. Boys are all horrid, but he's the hardest one I ever saw." And of course I forgot to bring something to drink in here. My mouth is dry as the Mojave. Fanny went to a fashionable school where the young ladies were so busy with their French, German, and Italian that there was no time for good English. Feeling her confidence much shaken in the youth, Polly privately resolved to let him alone and changed the conversation by saying, as she looked admiringly about the large handsome room, "How splendid it is! I never slept in a bed with curtains before, or had such a fine toilet table as this." "I'm glad you like it, but don't, for mercy's sake, say such things before the other girls," replied Fanny, wishing Polly would wear earrings as everyone else did. "Why not?" asked the country mouse of the city mouse, wondering what harm there was in liking other people's pretty things and saying so. "Oh, they laugh at everything the least bit odd, and that isn't pleasant." Fanny didn't say countrified, but she meant it, and Polly felt uncomfortable, so she shook out her little black silk apron with a thoughtful face and resolved not to allude to her home if she could help it. "I'm so poorly. Mama says I needn't go to school regularly while you are here. Only 2 or 3 times a week, just to keep up my music and French. You can go too if you like. Papa said so." "Do, it's such fun," cried Fanny, quite surprising her friend by this unexpected fondness for school. "I should be afraid if all the girls dress as finely as you do, and know as much," said Polly, beginning to feel shy at the thought. La, child, you needn't mind that. I'll take care of you and fix you up so you won't look odd. Am I odd? Asked Polly, struck by the word and hoping it didn't mean anything very bad. You are a dear and ever so much prettier than you were last summer, only you've been brought up differently from us, so your ways ain't like ours, you see, began Fanny, finding it rather hard to explain. How different? Asked Polly again, for she liked to understand things. Well, you dress like a little girl, for one thing. I am a little girl, so why shouldn't I? And Polly looked at her simple blue merino frock. Merino. Stout boots and short hair with a puzzled air. You're 14 and we consider ourselves young ladies at that age, continued Fanny, surveying with complacency the pile of hair on the top of her head with a fringe of fuzz round her forehead and a wavy lock streaming down her back. Likewise her scarlet and black suit with its big sash, little pannier, bright, I guess that's what that is, P-A-N-N-I-E-R. Bright buttons, points, rosettes, and heaven knows what. There was a locket on her neck, earrings tinkling in her ears, watch and chain at her belt, and several rings on a pair of hands that would have been improved by soap and water. Polly's eye went from one little figure to the other, and she thought that Fanny looked the oddest of the two, for Polly lived in a quiet country town and knew very little of city fashions. She was rather impressed by the elegance about her, never having seen Fanny's home before, as they got acquainted while Fanny paid a visit to a friend who lived near Polly. But she didn't let the contrast between herself and Fan trouble her, for in a minute she laughed and said contentedly, My mother likes me to dress simply, and I don't mind. I shouldn't know what to do rigged up as you are. Don't you ever forget to lift your sash and fix those puffy things when you sit down? Before Fanny could answer, a scream from below made both listen. It's only Maud. She fusses all day long, began Fanny, and the words were hardly out of her mouth when the door was thrown open, and a little girl of 6 or 7 came roaring in. She stopped at the sight of Polly, stared a minute, then took up her roar just where she left it and cast herself into Fanny's lap, exclaiming wrathfully, Tom's laughing at me. Make him stop. What did you do to get him going? Don't scream so. You'll frighten Polly. And Fan gave the cherub a shake, which produced an explanation. I only said we had cold cream at the party last night, and he laughed. Ice cream, child, and Fanny followed Tom's reprehensible example. I don't care, it was cold, and I warmed mine at the register, and then it was nice, only Willie Bliss spilt it on my new gabble. And Maud wailed again over her accumulated woes. Do go to Katy. You're as cross as a little bear today, said Fanny, pushing her away. Katy don't amuse me, and I must be amused, 'cause I'm fractious. Mama said I was, sobbed Maud, evidently laboring under the delusion that fractiousness was some interesting malady. Come down and have dinner. That will amuse you. And Fanny got up, pluming herself as a bird does before its flight. Polly hoped the, in quotations, dreadful boy would not be present, but he was, and stared at her all dinner time in a most trying manner. Mr. Shaw, a busy-looking gentleman, said, How do you do, my dear? Hope you'll enjoy yourself, and then appeared to forget her entirely. Mrs. Shaw, a pale, nervous woman, greeted her little guest kindly and took care that she wanted for nothing. Madam Shaw, a quiet old lady with an imposing cap, exclaimed on seeing Polly, Bless my heart, the image of her mother, a sweet woman. How is she, dear? and kept peering at the newcomer over her glasses till between Madam and Tom, poor Polly lost her appetite. Fanny chatted like a magpie, and Maud fidgeted till Tom proposed to put her under the big dish cover, which produced such an explosion that the young lady was borne screaming away by the much enduring Katy. It was altogether an uncomfortable dinner, and Polly was very glad when it was over. They all went about their own affairs, and after doing the honors of the house, Fan was called to the dressmaker, leaving Polly to amuse herself in the great drawing room. Polly was glad to be alone for a few minutes, and having examined all the pretty things about her, began to walk up and down over the soft, flowery carpet, humming to herself as the daylight faded and only the ruddy glow of the fire filled the room. Presently Madam came slowly in and sat down in her armchair, saying, "That's a fine old tune. Sing it to me, my dear. I haven't heard it this many a day." Polly didn't like to sing before strangers, for she had no teaching but such as her busy mother could give her, but she'd been taught the utmost respect for old people, and having no reason for refusing, she directly went to the piano and did as she was bid. "That's the sort of music it's a pleasure to hear. Sing some more, dear," said Madam in her gentle way when she had done. Pleased with this praise, Polly sang away in a fresh little voice that went straight to the listener's heart, nestled there. The sweet old tunes that one is never tired of were all Polly's store, and her favorites were Scotch airs such as "Yellow-Haired Laddie," "Jock o' Hazeldene," "Down Among the Heather," and "Berks of Aberfeldy." The more she sung, the better she did, and when she wound up with a "Health to King Charlie," the room quite rung with the stirring music made by the big piano and the little maid. "By George, that's a jolly tune. Sing it again, please," cried Tom's voice, and there was Tom's red head bobbing up over the high back of the chair where he had hidden himself. It gave Polly quite a turn, for she thought no one was hearing her but the old lady dozing by the fire. "I can't sing any more, I'm tired," she said, and walked away to Madam in the other room. The red head vanished like a meteor, for Polly's tone had been decidedly cool. The old lady put out her hand, and drawing Polly to her knee, looked into her face with such kind eyes that Polly forgot the impressive cat, and smiled at her confidingly, for she saw that her simple music had pleased her listener, and she felt glad to know it. And I'm going to stop there, and hopefully we can finish this chapter. I don't know how long it is. Good start. Thanks again, Miss Pat, for the suggestion of not necessarily that book, but to look more into Louisa May Alcott. Y'all be sweet. Have a wonderfully crafty day, and I'll be live at 5, which is in less than an hour from me saying it. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. Bye-bye.